Hello, everybody. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and you're on the lifeboat. All right. Okay. If you saw the thumbnail, there's a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack in that thumbnail. There's the part that I think is kind of interesting is that there's just nothing new under the sun. Sorry. I was looking back through some history, and then I was looking at modern times, and I see something that is recurring. There are some people on the boat who are old. Yep, there are some old people on this boat, and I'm one of them. So many of us graduated in the 80s from high school. The 80s class of 85, 86, 87, and 88 have had books written about them. They've had studies done on them because for whatever reason, they were some really, really messed up kids. Higher rates of people taking their own lives, way higher. The percentage of those kids who ended up addicted to drugs, way higher, staggeringly higher. The percentage of those kids who ended up in prison, way higher. And you start wondering what was going on. For those who were not lucky enough to grow up in the 80s with Rubik's cubes and big hair, and John Hughes movies. Well, if you missed that, what was happening in the 80s was a Cold War between the United States of America and the Soviet Union. And the idea was mutually assured destruction. That was the plan. You're not going to launch any nukes at me, because if you do, I'm going to launch nukes back, and there will not be a planet. At the time, I believe we were at about 8,000 warheads each. We're considerably less than that now. But we just kept building more and more and more. We had enough nukes to blow up the planet 20, 30 times over, but we needed a few more. And we heard all of these crazy things back in the day, that the U.S. had something called spoil sport. And these were hardened computers that were literally sitting inside concrete blocks, inside a concrete bunker. And every day, you have to enter a code in there. If you don't enter that code, 48 hours after you miss it, they would launch an entire other battery of nukes toward the Soviet Union. Just in case somehow they got to us before we got to them, we wanted to make sure that we got back at them, even if we were all dead. Pretty logical stuff, right? And this was something that was so pervasive throughout the high school years. I think I've told parts of these stories before, but I don't know that I've ever put it all together. I would show up in the morning, and I would go to first period class, which was a study hall. And our teacher, who was a lady, I won't tell you her name because she's probably still alive, but every single morning we would go in there and she would say, "How you doing, class? The doomsday clock is at 10 minutes to midnight." Every day. This is how the day started. The doomsday clock is at 6 minutes to midnight. If you're not familiar with the doomsday clock, it is this hypothetical clock that is set up by people in a think tank, and they tell you how close we are to destroying the entire planet. And I don't know how they arbitrarily attach a time to this, but they do. And apparently during the 80s, there were a couple of times where we were 2 minutes away, right? So I was asked 5 times in high school, I was asked to write a paper that in one way or another was about the fact that the Soviet Union has just launched a nuke, or we know they're about to, or whatever. And what are you going to do with the remaining 17 minutes of your life? Because back then they used to tell us that it was going to take about 17 minutes for their arsenal to reach us. And then it would take about 17 minutes for ours to reach them, and it was just mutually assured destruction. This really messed with the kids of that generation. It really did. It was all we talked about. You went to social studies class, that teacher wanted to talk about it. Tell you why this president sucked or the previous president sucked. It was nonstop bombardment. When you left school and you got away from all of those people that were trying to indoctrinate you, you know, we smoked a little pot or we drank and people cracked jokes about it. You know, it was just always on someone's mind. You went out to the theater, right? 5 really popular films from the 80s. The movie Red Dawn. You guys all remember the movie Red Dawn. Patrick Swayze when he was just a youngster. But every film I'm about to talk about had the bad guy as the Soviet Union. It was always about a missile. It was always about nukes that were getting ready to come get us. This was it. It was in everything. Second one was Firefox. If you remember that one, that was a Clint Eastwood film. He had to sneak into the Soviet Union and steal their most high-tech fighter plane, which, by the way, was carrying nukes, because everything had to carry nukes. Number 3, this is an odd one, Falcon and the Snowman. This was about a guy who worked for the United States government, but he had a high school friend that sold blow. And the two of them got together with the plan of selling some secrets to our enemies. Oddly enough, one of the 2 people from the Falcon and the Snowman was at one of the same yards I was at the federal system. Kind of a famous dude inside, because he got, 3 eternities or whatever. And he almost got smoked. They almost took him off the planet because it was treason. But somehow they saved that. Then if you wanted to see a comedy, if you didn't want, all of this stuff just dragging you down and at every turn talking about this, maybe you went out and wanted to see a comedy, you might have caught one called Spies Like Us. What's the premise? It's funny as hell. Really funny movie. Dan Aykroyd was in it. His wife, I think it was probably the only movie his wife, Donna Dixon, was ever in. Really beautiful blonde girl. Gorgeous. It was a very funny film. Chevy Chase was also in it. But it was not serious in any way, shape, or form. But once again, the enemy was Russia. It was all about nukes. Rocky 4, right? You want to watch just a Rocky movie. Well, Rocky was fighting a guy from the Soviet Union, and he was taking steroids, and he was all jacked up, and Rock had to go over and fight him in the Soviet Union, where everybody hated Rock, but by the end of the 15th round, they were cheering for him. And this, of course, made all of the guys in uniform scared, because it was like it was like World War III was being fought in a ring. Kind of a ridiculous plot. It was awful. Ivan Drago. Terrible, terrible film. But once again, just about the Cold War. And then probably the most relevant of all of them was one called War Games. And the reason this one was so insidious is the word is it was based on a true story. Now, when Hollywood says based on a true story, there doesn't need to be a whole lot of it in order for it to be based on a true story. But the part that was true was there was a computer anomaly of some kind. And during a war game simulation, the Soviet Union got a computer message that we had fired on them. And they're on the phone with the president who's saying, didn't happen. This is just a computer thing that we're doing over here. Nobody has fired anything. And they were putting the liquid into the rockets to launch. And there's a pretty famous story of one guy who refused to turn the key. The first strike. And they were basically not going to wait until, the first rockets hit. They were going to launch. And the way it used to work is a guy would be on one side of the room and a guy would be on the other with keys. And you'd look at him and go, 1, 2, 3. That way one psycho couldn't decide to launch a missile, on his own. But they got the news down there. They got the word. It's time to launch. And one of them went, I'm not doing it. Not doing it. He saved the planet. He got sent to prison for it. Not forever, but he did a little prison time for that. This was what was going on, right? And it was a constant bombardment. And these things take an effect. You may not think that they do, but they absolutely have an effect. And for us, the Time magazine and Newsweek 1988 or 89, came out with the article that just said AIDS. That was what it said on the top of both of them. And the scare that came out of that, they said that 1 in 90 club goers in New York was infected. And everyone they ever knew, and everyone they ever knew, and everyone they ever knew intimately would be affected as well. And there was a panic that just went through. And again, it was just this Gen X. We just got pounded with fear. And it was non-stop. The largest of all miniseries. I guess probably don't remember the miniseries because now we really don't have network television. But we used to have network television, ABC, NBC, CBS, that kind of stuff, right? And there was a film that took 6 days, I think. The name of the film was The Day After. The Day After was an American television film that first aired on November 20th, 1983 on the ABC television network. More than 100 million people in nearly 39 million households watched the film during its initial broadcast. With a 46 rating and a 62% share of the market, meaning of the viewing audience, meaning every single person who was out there watching TV, 6 out of 10 of them were watching this. These things don't happen anymore, right? There's so much diversity and so many options. This just does not happen. So a 62% share of the viewing audience during its initial broadcast. The film was the 7th highest rated non-sports show until then, and it set a record as the highest rated television film in history, which it still holds. The premise of this film was, it already happened. There wasn't a whole lot of the build up, and there wasn't a whole lot of, are they going to launch? Are we going to launch? That baby opened with mushroom clouds. That's how it started. And you followed several families, and you watched what radiation was doing to people. And it's just, we were 12 and 13 years old, and they plopped us down in front of the television set, and you watched this for 5 days. And then you went to school, and the teachers talked about it, right? And they had all of them had a political lean, right? Your shop teacher, he wanted to make sure you voted this way. And your political science teacher, well, they wanted you to vote this way. And you were just being pulled constantly. And when people would say, you know what, that stuff's it's gonna kill brain cells. You're gonna be brain dead by the time you're 25. I mean, the response was 25? Maybe you didn't get the memo. Nobody's hitting 25. I knew people who said, I'm not going to go to college. What's the point? It really was that nasty and pervasive. There was no place that you could go to avoid this. And it had an effect. It had a devastating effect. It really did. You look at Gen X and you look at those years, the kids who grew up with that impending doom. And by the way, that was not the first thing that they dumped on us as Gen Xers, right? If you're old enough, the first thing was the hole in the ozone layer, right? This was terrifying because they told us it was going to bring acid rain that caused something called chloracne, right? And this was a chemical version of acne, pimples, whatever, but it would eat away flesh on the face. You're 13 and 14 and 15, right? Zits are a part of every day of your life. Pimples are a reality of your life. And they were there telling us that there was a hole in the ozone layer right above the South Pole. And the hole was the size of Texas. That hole was created by women's hairspray, propellant inside aerosol cans called fluorochlorocarbons, right? CFCs. Why I still remember that is insane. But they got rid of them. They absolutely got rid of them. But we were told, because of that hole in the ozone, we were going into an ice age. We were all going to freeze to death. Fast forward 10 or 15 years, it's the opposite direction, or now they've gotten smart enough to just call it climate change. And you know what? Whether you believe it or not, I don't care. I really don't. Makes absolutely no difference to me whatsoever. I don't care. But I'll tell you what, if you think we're screwed up, wait till you see what's going to happen to our kids. Because what we lived through was nothing. Yeah, you would turn on the news and they would scare the hell out of you. But the news would last 30 minutes. And then you had to wait 24 hours to see it again. You know, there wasn't this constant feed of whatever you wanted to watch in news. Oh, you lean left? Here's left stories all day long. You lean right? Here's right stories all day long. We'll just ingrain this stuff into your head. Okay, if that wasn't bad enough, right? Because really, if all we were talking about was the fact that there's a lot of stuff going on in the world right now and our kids have access to it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, they have this thing, right? And what's frightening is they don't necessarily get facts out of it, right? One of my favorite jokes is, well, I read it on the internet, so you know it's got to be true, right? You know it's got to be true. Sadly, this is having an effect on our children. And I'm not saying this is a hypothetical. Like, we're going to notice this in 20 years. These kids are not going to be... No, I'm talking about right now. Right freaking now. You want some numbers that are all kinds of fun? You're not going to like them. I mean, I'll warn you, you're not going to like them. Because this is fear too. But this is real. 1 in 3, that would be 30.6% of young adults between the ages of 18 and 25 experienced a mental health, behavioral, or emotional issue in the past year. By issue, they mean they went to a doctor and sought medical help for it. 30%. 30%. Did you know anybody that went to a doctor for depression when we were growing up, or any kind of... It just didn't happen. Now, maybe it should have, but 30%? Seems like a really high number to me. 26.9% of teenagers between 12 and 17 have one or more mental, emotional, developmental, or behavioral problems. 26%. 1 in 4. Right? Walk into a classroom. What's the average classroom got in it? 16 kids? 4 of them. 4 of them. 36.7%, 36.7% of high school students reported feeling of sadness, hopelessness in the past year. This percentage is higher for females, where it's 46.6, or damn near half. Hispanic students were at 40%, and the LGBTQ LMNOP are at 66.3%. Lastly, among college students, 30%, I'm rounding it up because it's that close, 29 point a bunch of nines, have been diagnosed with anxiety, and 23.6% have been diagnosed with depression. Rates of teen take your own life ideology. Kids who say, yeah, I absolutely think about hurting myself. The number of kids who relate that, it's 6 times higher than it's ever been. It's not a little higher. It's 6 times. So times 6, not 6 digits higher. Multiply that baby by 6. And a great deal of them are successful. We've never seen this many kids being lost. And because adults are basically idiots. You've got everybody saying, they're all saying the same thing. It's because they're being bullied on social media. Well, I believe that's got plenty to do with it. No question. We talked about this before. If you get high school boys and high school girls, they are completely different animals. High school boys fight, right? If they're going to have an antisocial behavior of any kind, they're going to swing at each other. They display that through violence, is what it is, right? So I'm not saying it's good, but that's what it is. Women don't do that. So girls who start to have a antisocial, display, they do what is called reputation destroying. They do everything they can to destroy a person's reputation, right? Call her a slut, whatever. The sad thing is, now they've got a little handheld computer, and oftentimes it grows past the school. Like they put a post up on Instagram, and kids that live 2,000 miles away are popping on there and going, yeah, dirty whore. Well, these kids, on top of that, are living in a world that, let's see, they went through the first time anyone had ever been asked to wear a diaper on their face and not leave their house. That never happened to us, right? You got any at all idea what that's going to do? Because I don't. I don't. Pull them out of school for a year and a half. See what's going to happen. I don't have a clue. And I don't think anyone else does. But this fear is absolute constant. It is the constant in our life and in our kids. The difference is we have a little bit of perspective because they've been telling us that the world was going to end in 6 months since we were 11. Here we are in our 50s, but our kids are hearing this stuff for the first time and seeing it, right? And it's in music and it's in everything, right? I didn't even mention our music, right? All of the songs from the 80s that were about, annihilation and, I hope the Soviets love their children too. It was just nonstop. You couldn't even turn on the radio. And this is 10 times worse. Listen to this. Recent events show all too clearly that many of the biggest threats we face respect no borders or walls and must be met with collective action. Pandemics and the biological risks, the escalating climate crisis, cyber and digital threats, international economic disruptions, protracted humanitarian crises, violent extremism and terrorism, and the proliferation of nuclear weapons and weapons of mass destruction all pose profound and, in some cases, existential dangers. No one can be effectively addressed by one nation acting alone, and none can be directly addressed with the United States on the sideline. You know who wrote that? That's from the White House. That's their assessment of the world that our kids are living in, right? That's the cheery response from the White House. I could not read the entire thing because it would have taken 30 minutes, but they went on like that forever. It went on like that forever, and they talked about just how horrendous the race war, basically. That's not what they called it, but the hatred between all of the races. I don't hate anybody, man. I hate anybody. But they would sure have you believe that, we all hate. Oh, you're not me? You're not exactly like me? I hate you. Get off the boat. They believe that crap. They believe that. I've never asked anybody on the boat what color they were. I never cared. Right? Or your sexual preference. What do I care? I don't think a lot of people care, to be really honest with you. But I think they got to create a problem so that we keep them in office to fix the problem. But whatever it is, the world that we live in is fear porn. It really is. You can hop from one show to another that just terrifies you like a horror film and never ever have to turn one off. And every 24 hours there'd be a whole new batch, right? Now, I like being informed. There are platforms I watch that talk about news that you don't hear in the mainstream. I don't have an issue with that. I really don't. And I think that I have evolved somewhat in that I don't bury my head in the sand anymore. I don't. The way that I view fear right now is the way that I view basically everything else. I'm going to have a damn plan, right? My sobriety had a plan. I'm going to have a plan in case everybody's right. That's it. If it's to go to hell in a handbasket today, I'm going to be eating. I'm going to have water. I promise you that. And there was an awful lot of, you just became a granddad. Uncle Bill. Can we get a 1 in the chat for Uncle Bill? That is the coolest thing. How cool is that? Congratulations, my friend. Be handing out cyber cigars all around. Do we have a name on this bundle of joy? That is so cool, man. Very, very happy for you. So happy for you. That is great. It really is. And you know what, people? It's funny because I was talking to somebody. I think it was Alan Valentine. May. What a beautiful name. We were, congratulations, Grandpa. I was talking to Alan Valentine earlier. And I just said, when is the last time you heard a feel-good story? Right? And then we get Uncle Bill. But honestly, you know, do you hear a lot of feel-good stories? I mean, you can watch shorts. I watched a cat wrestle with a puppy today. It was one of the funniest and cutest things I've ever seen in my life. And for probably the 4 minutes that I just continued to watch it on, you know, a never-ending loop, I was tickled pink. I was actually having a pretty good time. But most of us have been around the block, right? A crap load of times. Most of us have seen this because there's nothing new under the sun, right? It's the new what's going to end this world. It's the new this is the tragedy. And I'm not telling you people that it may not come true. I am of the firm belief that we have been this close to all of us getting, you know, completely annihilated since I was born, right? Right around the Cuban Missile Crisis. I don't think it's ever really gotten better. I think that the reason that we get through life happy is because we had this sort of ignorance is bliss kind of thing that's been going on for a really long time. It's not there anymore. You know, now I can get round and round. I can talk to people in Europe, right? I can get the message from my platform, and I have people in Australia listening right now, right? I got people in England, I got people in Scotland, right? I know we got some people in Mexico. I'm this big, right? Teeny. How about the big platforms? Now, information or disinformation or misinformation, right? Or absolute fact will get around the globe faster than you can tie your shoes. I watched Afghanistan doing jumping jacks. Look that up on YouTube. Thank me later. I bet everyone laughs. I love the term thank me later. Excuse me. And Canadians. Well, Conky Donk's backing you up. He said he's seen that. The point, people, the point that I'm making is, here, best part of the UK. Great to have you. I love it when people on the other side of the pond are here. I think you're more civilized. I really mean that. I don't particularly feel like a very civilized nation these days. So what's the point? You know, am I just coming here to rail? I'm not. I think that the absolute key to virtually everything, I don't care what it is, trying to stay sober, trying to keep your marriage together, trying to make a business work, I don't care what it is. If you're not communicating and communicating correctly, right, putting an effort into actual communication, you're not going to get done what you're trying to get done. Your business ain't going to work, right? None of those things. If you're not communicating, and it doesn't have to be, you know, with people you love. It could be just, you know, people you do work with, whatever. The guy that comes and picks your packages up, you better make sure you communicate perfectly, or your watch is going to end up in a different country and screws up business. It all continues to come back to communication. But you know what we did a little while ago? We just stopped that. Seriously, we stopped it, especially with our own kids. We've got time for that. You know what I mean? I'll buy them a really nice phone and I won't even have to look at them, right? I don't have to talk to them. I don't have to do anything. Will glass coffins be a success? Remains to be seen. Oh, seventh. That's actually some of your better work. I need to communicate more. You're absolutely right, you do. And I don't even know you. But you, of course you do. I do too. And I spend 2 hours a day talking to a group of people. We all need to communicate better. We do. We need to set our phones down and actually talk to one another. It goes a long way. And if you can communicate with somebody in a different country and realize that, you know, we may talk a little different, We're all the same people, man. Same fears, same hopes, same goals. Nothing new under the sun, people. Nothing. So, communication is the hallmark of recovery. Well said, M. Hunt. And it's also the only hope you got of raising a kid that doesn't turn into a drug addict or worse. Because right now, on this side of the world, between 400 and 500 people a day are dying, right, from drug overdoses. And they all had parents that said 3 syllables, just say no. Okay, have fun, go off to school. You need to communicate with your kids. And you need to ask questions like, hey, everything going on in the world, is it scaring the hell out of you? Tell me the truth. You having a hard time sleeping? Do you think we're going to be gone in 3 months? What's going on in your head? I had a conversation with my mom. And, very often because of the lifeboat, conversations always come back to, to drugs or me, my sobriety or whatever. We talk about that a lot. And I brought up the 80s, and I said, it was just a really tough time to be to grow up because of all of the different things that were going on. It was just a really rough time. And she said, "What are you talking about?" And I brought up the day after. She didn't remember that. Right now, some of us are 50, some of us are 60, right? Late 40s, or early 40s, whatever. We don't view the earth through the same lens that our kids do. We've seen this show before, right? We've seen this before. Everybody keeps talking about it. How many times have we been at the doorstep for annihilation? So we don't pay it nearly as much mind. If it happens, it happens. That's not how kids view it. It scares the crap out of them. It really does. And it creates drug addicts. Because if the fear that this other country is going to come and get them, if that fear makes them feel uncomfortable in their own skin, the first thing that makes them comfortable, they're going to wrap their arms around, and they're never going to let go. I did it. Everybody here did it. You got that substance that made the fear go away, it made the discomfort go away, it made whatever ailed you was cured by the drink, the smoke, right? The pill, whatever. So communicate with your kids. Ask them a crap load of questions. Say to them, put the phone down. Sorry, put the phone down. You're not going to text anybody. I don't care if you got a like or you need to like something. Don't pick that up for the next 30 minutes. And I would just start setting time aside. And when you say, listen, I want you to say no to drugs, you got to say, do you know why I want you to say no to drugs? Do you know why this is so important? I put you through driver's education because I don't want anything to happen to you. I don't want you to get in a car crash. That's why we forced you to take driver's education. And you had to log X number of hours behind the wheel of a car. And then you had to take a written exam there. And then you had to go take a written exam and a driving exam at the Department of Motor Vehicles before we're going to let you get behind the wheel of a car. You're 10 times more likely to die of a drug overdose. But just say no. Here are the car keys. That's what we're doing. And we're doing it in a world that they're scared. Hell, half of the adults are scared. I love that Marfugel starts every show and says, you know what? If you get easily upset by this stuff, don't watch it. If this stuff really puts you off, then don't watch. There's a warning at the beginning of every single one of his shows, and I think that's stand-up. I really do. I think that's stand-up. And I won't lie to you. I watch that religiously. I love Marf. I love Dex. I wouldn't have my kid watching it with me, though. I wouldn't. And I'd be careful as hell that my kid might be listening. Because it's one story after another that the mainstream or lamestream or whatever you want to call it, that media isn't going to tell the story. So there are a bunch of people like us, right, who have some kind of a platform who feel the need to get that out. You follow? So because of that, the proliferation of people who just tell bad news, right? Because all the other stuff they talk about, they're just not talking about how scary it is because they don't want anybody panicking or this or that. So you turn on one of those, and for an hour and a half, it's one scary thing after another, after another, after another. And I'm telling you, if you're in your 30s, you're going to be fine with that. My daughter right now, she doesn't talk to me right now. I know she and my youngest grandbaby lives with me. She cannot handle life. I'm going to make a suggestion, and you can take it or leave it. I'm no doctor. I don't know. I'm not a guru. But when somebody of the younger age is using, the reason that they instantly say no if you ask them is because they know that if they say yes, that we're instantly going to judge them, right? And we're going to do everything we can to try to change their life. You guys have seen Spanx, right? You know, my son hangs out here. My son has never lied to me. I kid you not. And I can think of 50 times I wish he did. For real. He has been so honest that there are times I really wish he wasn't that honest. But I remember the first time I said to him, you're not doing any drugs, are you? And he just went and just proceeded to list off everything he had ever experimented with, how much he experimented when he had. Dad wasn't going to give him crap. I wasn't going to yell at him. We train our children, whether you realize it or not, we do. And if you say, listen, just be really honest with me. Are you doing drugs? Are you doing anything? And they go, yeah, you know what, I'm eating some pills. Okay. That wasn't that hard, right? Now let's talk about how that can affect you. Who are you doing it with? Kevin. You can never hang out with Kevin again, right? You lose your mind. The veins come out of your neck. You start screaming. What did you just tell your kid? Don't tell me the truth. No, I can't handle it, right? Lie to me. Don't tell me the truth. You saw what that'll do, right? Don't do that. If you just said, man, I'll tell you what, I'm disappointed. I thought Kevin had a lot more on the ball. Truthfully, I just did not see him that way. Damn. Well, please be careful. Let's talk about the drugs you absolutely cannot afford to do, because 4 out of 10 of them will kill you, or 6 out of 10 of them will kill you, depending on what they're taking. There are deadly doses in every batch. And I don't want one of those to end up in your stomach, because it will kill you. And you have those conversations. People always say all the time, they'll never listen to me. I'm their parent. I got news for you. Your kid will listen to you more than they will listen to any other adult on the planet. Believe that. Believe it. Will they roll their eyes and do all that crap? Of course. Teenagers have been rolling their eyes since before there was electricity. But they will listen, especially if you sit down and you force them to listen. And if they won't drag their butt over here, right? Call me. I'll do a call one-on-one. And I've done that. I've done that for a lot of people, where they put me on Skype and I talk to their kids. I'm not going to bust your chops. How old are you? Okay. I had been doing dope for 4 years by the time I was your age, every day. I'm not here to give you crap. I'm here to talk to you about what is out there, so that if you're going to experiment and somebody goes, hey, I got these pills. They're strong as hell. They got a 30 on them. An M30? I'm good. I'm good. I'll smoke that joint. I'm not doing that one, because that stuff can kill people. It's killing people all over the place. Education is huge. You're right about using drugs to forget what you're feeling. I first used coke in 2019. By summer 2020, I was up to 60 G a week addiction. Good Lord. 2021, marriage breakup. 2022, house and assets all sold off. That is a vicious drug problem. I mean it. That is a vicious drug problem. Yeah, I got to a point once, I think I was probably doing about 40, 45, and I never stopped. Honestly, we had stolen a pile of it, so I wasn't paying for it. But I never stopped. Like, you were doing it, or you're up and you're doing it, you're up. That's a lot. Thank God you're still here, huh? For really. Thank God that you're still here. Always, Kevin. Should have known. Oh, Johnny, oh, that's funny. Yeah, 60 G's a week is really tough. Really tough. I shouldn't be here. You mean you probably should have died. Because you're not talking about the lifeboat. You definitely should be here. Yeah, I assume you mean that, it's a miracle you're alive, right? And I agree with you, it is. Doctor, Doctor, I keep getting the urge to purchase a big white bear from the Arctic. You've got bipolar disorder. That's awful. That is really, really awful. I tried Coke. All it did was make my face numb. I was not impressed. You know what, Schrodinger squirrel? That's, you hear a 50-50 split. Very often you hear people say, you know what, the back of my throat was all numbed up. I felt like I was going to vomit. My gag reflex was going nonstop. I did not like that at all. And the next person says, I felt like I was looking through gauze, like I had never seen a crystal clear day. And then instantly I did that first one and everything in the world was crystal clear for about 15 minutes. And then I had to start getting the next one. And you never get back to that first feeling, ever. You never do. Hooray, good to see you. I watched cocaine ruin my best friend's marriage. Oh, the number of marriages that have been ruined by blow is just absolutely amazing. Anything hard I even tried made me sick, except maybe booze. Booze is hella hard, believe that. Coke does hit some people differently. Absolutely no two ways. No two ways. They're more than any other substance I've ever seen. I've seen people do it and go, meh, nothing, right? Oh yeah, I know what you mean, Miss V. I know what you mean. Yeah, you just, some people do it and then, meh. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. It was a blessing that I didn't get any enjoyment out of it. You're absolutely right. Hey, CK, good to see you. That's all right. You just got to write on the chalkboard that you're not going to be late when the show's over. Stick around. Don't take off. Jen Miller says Coke was my drug of choice, and after 6 months, I was ready to sell my car. So I stopped and never touched it again. I hear people say stuff like that all the time, and it always blows my mind. How you stopped? Right? I don't get it. I don't have that button. That's why I don't do anything now, because I will never be able to do anything. Yeah, Diary of a Madman. That's standard operating procedure. He said I did so much heroin back in the day that I would smoke 3 or 4 grams, and in an hour I would go to sleep. Yeah, I would do between 6 and 7 a day was pretty standard for me. My mom was an alcoholic. So yeah, you probably had the gene. A lot of times people think that everybody's different. Absolutely everybody's different. Everybody's different. I'll tell you another drug like that. Amphetamines, right, is another drug that if you get somebody that truthfully and honestly has attention deficit, or they have hyperactivity disorder, or either, or both. And I knew a girl in Texas, I've told the story on here before, and she came over to the apartment, and she had Dizoxin, right, which is the strongest of them. And she said, I ate one of these last night, and it knocked me out in like 15 minutes. I was like, knocked you out? What do you mean, knocked you out? Like you were wasted? And she's like, no, like I was asleep. And I'm reading the bottle, and I'm like, this stuff doesn't put you to sleep, right? Not for about 4 days. And so I do the Dizoxin, and one of my friends says to me, it makes perfect sense. If you had a Xanny bar and you gave it to that girl, she would bounce off the walls like a pinball game. And I happened to have one. And I said to her, hey, you want to take one of these? And she would come over with her prescription, and we would just swap, because she really liked sort of being in the manic phase. But the only thing that would do that to her was depressants, because the brain chemistry was just that much different. Doctor, I think I'm a cat. How long has this been going on? Since I was a kitten. I saw that one coming. I despise all forms of speed. Can't stay the way it makes people act. I can't be around them. M. Hunt. There was a time when it was a completely different drug. There was a time when it was a completely, I mean 180-degree different drug, where people would stay up for 3 or 4 days. They wouldn't get weird. They didn't stare out the blinds. They didn't pick their face, right? They didn't obsess. It was just really, really different. And then they came out with these two other recipes, right? The cold cook, right, with the anhydrous ammonia and the lithium strips and all that. And then the hot one, the one that they actually have to put some heat to, the red, white, and blue iodine crystals, red phosphorus, and the white ephedrine. And both of those make people strange as hell. They're both the crystallized version, right? The original stuff was powdered, and or paste sometimes, also like peanut butter. And once it started becoming crystallized, it just went to garbage, And I hate sounding like a really old man, but when it was P2P, it was just a completely different different substance. But I don't like the stuff today either. Johnny, I'm glad you don't take pain pills anymore. Yeah, I'm glad you don't either. I don't take pain pills anymore because, man, I know that's my demon. Johnny Law, there is such a gift to know what your demon is. To recognize it and say, I'm never going down that road again because I know that stuff owns me. There are people that will go their entire life and never ever say that. Now I just wonder where I put my keys. I wonder where I lost that money. Oh, boy, I could tell you stories. That is me. I lose everything. Yeah, that's a blessing. It really is. Did I just hear a Hey Zen? I didn't even see ZW. Is she here? Yeah, bathtub crank. There she goes. Yep, bathtub. And that stuff was a different substance. Really, really a different substance. Anyone ever inhaled so much butane while smoking drugs that you completely lost your voice? No, but here in the city that I live in, a guy blew his house off of the basement. Honestly, like the whole thing just went up and over to the left, and it was a rental. But he had a big operation in his basement, and they were using butane to pull extracts out of weed. He had an indoor grow operation, and they were using that butane to make wax and to make all different versions of everything. But apparently, nothing in the house was ever supposed to be turned on or connected or anything. That's the only thing it was used for. And there was a shower downstairs and a bathroom, and his girl went in just to wash hands, and she used hot water, and eventually the pilot on the hot water heater kicked on, and it just blew all the windows out of the basement. And I'm not kidding you, like the house just went. You could see the side of the concrete, and he looked like something from the cartoons. Had the burnt hair and I know it doesn't sound funny. It was hysterical if you could see him, because no one really got hurt. He couldn't hear much for a while, but everyone here listening again, but can't chat. Much love, Captain and crew. That's all right, ZW. We're glad you're here. We really are. And we're going to do everything we can. Yes, dude was making hash oil block. Super easy to blow yourself up. Yeah, it really is. I remember what the heck is smoking butane. It's not so much that you're smoking butane, is that butane gets used in recipes, and Wile E. Coyote comes to mind. Here in San Francisco, yep. Yeah, honestly, there's a lot that happened from the past that you can look back and laugh. Honestly, you know what I mean? I say all the time, I don't badmouth every experience that I have. I'm not one of those person that writes off their entire past. I write off the stuff that I did that I feel horrendously guilty for. But I was there for some really funny, there were some really epically funny things that happened. PHO hash, propane extraction, BHO, butane extraction. Okay, there you go. I remember going to the hospital once because some lady was there for burns because she was smoking and painting. I turned it into butter. You know what, M. Hunt? The next time you're on Johnny's channel, drop that one. That was when I was really young. That was Johnny's go-to thing. Was that he would put everything into butter, and then he would pour it into ice cube trays because you could just go in there and pop out one little cube, and that was usually enough to destroy people in a batch of brownies. And if he really wanted to get nasty, he would use 2 of them. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. The only thing we have to fear is ignorance. And I don't mean stupidity, because those are 2 different things. I mean not being educated on what's going on, right? You're gonna hear in the next 4 months, you're gonna hear that an electromagnetic pulse is going to take out every single bit of power. Everything that ever had a computer chip anywhere in the US will never work again. Well, that's a very scary concept. It is. It's a very scary concept. And then shortly thereafter, they'll say, if it's not an EMP, then it will be a coronal mass ejection, like the Carrington event. We're due for another one. Or, there's going to be that big volcano that we've got that hasn't gone off in a very long time. I'm very ignorant on this stuff. I'm here to learn and get support from my daughter. Well, that's clutch. How old is your daughter? You know what? Don't do that. Send me an email, sober, S-O-B-E-R, at myyahoo.com. Not Yahoo, my Yahoo. It should be in the Dropbox. Or, if I know Charlie Murphy, he's probably going to put it up any second. Or an alien invasion. You know what? They're talking a lot about alien invasions of, see you later, Charlie, like clockwork. Well, they're also talking about an invasion from south of the border, and I have a very difficult time saying that might not happen because we're watching some pretty gnarly stuff come through that border. I don't know why they wouldn't try to send other stuff. It's pretty easy to get in Fent, obviously. I say volcanoes and space lasers. Yeah, I don't want to. I really don't want to rule out reptilians. Don't want to rule out the reptilians. People, when I was on the other side of the wall, I used to be in. There was a couple of different places I was where it was just you. It might be you and another guy, but you never really had interaction with anybody, and it was loud round the clock, literally, because you're locked in there, for 23 hours a day. People keep different shifts, and when they wake up, they scream to their friends in different places because it's the only way you can communicate. So I had this routine where I would try to sleep the entire day away, right? Put cotton in the ears and just try to sleep the entire time that it was light out. And I did this for about 1.5 years. And when I would wake up, I would put on Coast to Coast AM. And if you're familiar with Coast to Coast AM, it has evolved. It has changed. There's a guy named George Norrie that has taken over the show. And the lizard people, Dracos, are already here. Pariah knows. Stacey Michaels, I knew you'd know that. But prior to, the very original version of it with the gentleman from Pahrump, that, the founder was a guy named Art Bell. He was from Pahrump, Nevada. And Art was incredible. He had a way of bringing people on. Thank you, ZW. He had a way. Nori painted the boo. You know what? Those are big shoes to fill. What made him absolutely incredible was that no matter what, no matter how outrageous the person was, if their theory was the dumbest thing you ever heard in your entire life, Art Bell was not going to be fazed. He was not going to make him feel stupid. He wasn't going to mock him. It was a whole lot of fun. Montauk Project at the Philadelphia Experiment. Franklin watches. Yep. MK Ultra. The stuff out on Plum Island. Talk about that one a lot. I listen to Art all the time, says AKA Heather Joy. Yep. I love that show. He just listened. Obviously, you need to take it with a grain of salt. Yeah, I mean, it was the really crazy thing about that show was it was just there was just enough stuff on there that was absolutely true that it made you question everything else. You know what I mean? Like there were certain stories that no two ways about it. Right? This is documentable. What they're talking about, and they were usually ahead of the curve. They were usually talking about it before anybody in the real media was talking about it. And once those things kind of came out, they would come out and say, well, we were telling you about this 4 months ago. Then they'll play the clip. And it had you wondering. It just had you thinking. I say things often like, that was one of the hardest I've laughed in my whole life. Or I laughed for 25 minutes. Those kind of things, that hyperbole, we just grew up saying stuff like that. And from that part of the country, everybody talks like that. But I'm about to tell you a story, and it really may have been the hardest I ever laughed. They were doing a call-in show on that, and a guy called in and started telling a story about it was Thanksgiving, and he was walking through town and he saw a guy that was homeless, and it was cold and it was ugly, and he said, "Why don't you come home? You can eat with my family. You shouldn't be outside in the cold for Thanksgiving." And he goes on and tells, he's like breaking down what the sides were, other than turkey. Like the details were incredible. He said, and then at one point during the festivities, this guy's eyes began to glow green. He said, and I was looking at everybody else at the table to see if maybe they had noticed whether or not that was going on, and nothing. Right? He doesn't notice from anybody else that there's even any kind of they're not acknowledging it. But it goes on, and he said, finally, I realized the guy was an alien, so I picked him up, roughly, and I kind of threw him outside. And when he's done talking, Art Bell goes, wow, it's quite a story. And the guy goes, I did eat like 6 grams of mushrooms earlier in the day, by way of full disclosure, but I really don't think it had much to do with what happened. And when he dropped the mushroom line, I was in a cell that was supposed to house 2 men, and they had 5 in it because of an overflow thing. And all 5 of us were listening to this, and we could not get. We laughed until the sun came up. It was so funny. By way of full disclosure, I did eat a full bag of mushrooms that night, but I don't think that had anything to do with it. Softer tissues. Hooked myself up today. Went to Sam's Club. Did a little Sam's Club shopping. We have Missing Kingdoms. Tataria. Alan Ballantyne is saying good night to M. Hunt. M. Hunt, hope you had a great day. It sounded like a great day. From stem to stern, it sounded like it was awesome. And I tell you what, people, tomorrow I'm going to be doing a little cleanup around the house because the following day, my little girl is flying out to see me. And man, I'm excited about that. Got run off by a couple of people with guns because I called them out. I'm going to recommend that anytime somebody has guns, letting them run you off is probably not such a bad idea. Standing your ground when the people are heavily armed. I don't know. You can kind of play it any way you want, but it's not my gay town. Hey, Luke Skywalker, good to see you. Yeah, I got something cool, but I'm gonna save it for the next show because we're at the top of the hour, and I'm gonna go watch some scary. I'm not honestly, but you know what? Talk to your kids, talk to your grandkids. Let them know that this kind of stuff has been happening for all eternity. For real, like get a little Nostradamus and show them all the predictions that Nostradamus made. People like to say, Nostradamus predicted, 15 things absolutely perfect because all day long he sat around and made predictions. Like if you ever see the book of all of the predictions he's made, if I went like this, the world's going to end on December 7th. We're going to have a battle on December 7th before noon. And he just regurgitates like 7 million options. Obviously, one of them was going to happen. Short of Squirrel, you have a good night. Reflection says the Bible is truth. You know what? I like to say, I don't think too many people on their deathbed said, if I could do it all over again, I would have read the Bible less. Know what I mean? Oh, okay. All right, people. We are at the top of the hour. Smitty, take care of yourself, please. Wharton, good to see you, Wharton. Staying busy with a hobby. That's the spirit. Wharton, I'll tell you something. I have really developed a taste for your sense of humor. I really have. I've seen you in other places, and you say things that just knock me down sometimes. Greg F., man, I'm glad you're here, Greg. I really am. You're in my thoughts and prayers. And you will remain there. I promise you. Reflections, I hope we see more of you. I hope you come back. And do send me an email. I'd like to hear a little bit more about the situation with your daughter, and maybe I can give you a thought or two. Hey, Bent, it was great seeing you. Jen Miller, take care. Leisure, love you, bud. Noise Opera, there he is. I am the Noise Opera. Very fond of raccoons. I'm not sure if you knew that. Thank you. Hey, Alan Ballantyne, I love you, brother. Charlie. All right, peeps. I'll be back tomorrow morning. It's going to be about 5 a.m. on the West Coast. Everybody have a great evening. And between now and tomorrow's show, reach out and try to save somebody, huh? The world needs it. And this, people, that is a cat in a basket. What are you doing? You're making it hard. There you go. Who's a good girl? All right. Thanks, people. You have a great night. I love this cat.